All right, everyone. Hi, I'm Erin Heath. I'm Director of Federal Relations at AAAS, and I have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Sudip Parikh. He's the CEO of AAAS and the executive publisher of the Science family of journals. So this is Sit Down with the CEO. We have only about 10 minutes, and we're going to use it to have a conversation about what AAAS is doing at this moment in time. So, Sudip, you've worked in the Senate, and I imagine this policy know-how has informed you in every leadership role you've had since then, including, of course, as CEO of AAAS. So given that lens, what do you make of what we've been seeing in Washington in recent weeks?
Yeah. Sometimes people use the word unprecedented, and it ain't unprecedented. I would say that this is a moment to use that word. I'd also say that the things that we're seeing, particularly yesterday, are damaging. And when I woke up this morning, I had a chance to catch up on the news from yesterday. I think that there are things and decisions that we're making that we're going to regret, and there are also moments ahead of work that we've got to do to ensure that we don't do damage. And so the learning that I had in Congress is understanding the appropriations process and understanding that there are some important dates coming up. March 14th is the end of what's called a continuing resolution. And that continuing resolution sets two things. One is it has a protection for some of the research capacity building work that is done by the National Institutes of Health. And the second is it sets funding levels for the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, and other places. So all these changes that you're seeing right now, they don't become, in terms of dollar amounts, final until they're incorporated into an appropriations bill. And so March 14th looms incredibly large. And so what that means is that you're seeing a rallying of organizations, scientific societies, patient advocacy organizations, industry, and others who are coming together to say, how do we actually work together to ensure that the scientific enterprise, not just because for the sake of science, but for the sake of the country, for prosperity, for health, for environment, is sustained. And so one of the things that I'm looking forward to is seeing that structure, that collaborative structure, go forward, particularly towards March 14th, but then thereafter. And the way I'm looking at this is that we are in a story. We're in a story, and we're in the middle of the beginning of that story. That story is being written, and I, for one, have no intention of allowing it to play out without there being a protagonist that is the scientific societies and the scientific enterprise, and ensuring that we are playing our role in setting the agenda as well. It ain't going to be easy. It's going to be tough, but we have to do that because we have a grand inheritance from the people that came before us, and we have a duty to the next generation. So I'm committed to that.
Thank you. And tell us more about what is AAAS been doing to meet this moment.
Yeah, quite a few things. So if you noticed, it's hard to get folks to go on record. You'll see lots of statements that are unsigned. You'll see lots of work on background. I hope you see that I have gone on record, and I hope you see that I have testified directly to Congress just in the last week and a half. That is, there are risks that come with that. There are risks that come with that. But it's important to do because you have to put a face to the things that are happening. You also have to be able to make an argument that, again, is not about the scientific enterprise necessarily by itself. It's about the impact of the scientific enterprise and what we do for the country. What is that social contract with the country? And it has there's a short term, a middle term, and a long term in this story. In the short term is, again, this focus on a date, March 14th, and that requires a lot of tactical work of ensuring how do you get language in an appropriations bill. I'm not going to go into the details of that here, but I can tell you that I am focused like no other thing on that, and in collaboration with, again, patients, industry, and other scientific societies. Then there comes a longer-term discussion. So after March 14th, we're going to have some things that are going to break in the next few weeks. Without a strategy, a tactical, you're not taking a strategic look at an organization. You're just willy-nilly separating people who just have been there a certain time. There are things that break. There are things that break, important things. And we're going to see a little bit of that. And we have to make sure that we are identifying those, finding those, and taking issue with those over the next few weeks and months. The other thing is about the scientific enterprise itself. There's a lot of grief today. Grief. I'll just use that word. There were a lot of separations yesterday at science agencies of scientists, of folks who support the sciences, and that is real, and it's palpable. And some of them are our friends and colleagues. And I think there's a responsibility for organizations like the AAAS to acknowledge that, to identify ways for folks to speak with one another. I think this meeting certainly wasn't planned to be timed with it, but I can tell you that the collegiality, the community that we have here provides a lot of hope for me, and I hope it provides energy for all of you. The next phase of that is to also learn what are the stories that I can't hear while I'm here. So we'll be creating opportunities for everyone in the community to actually provide their story to us. Storytelling matters in times like this. Storytelling is what actually gets people to change their minds. Data is a prerequisite. Data is a prerequisite on Capitol Hill, but it's not like the scientific community where we argue back and forth with just data and evidence. You have to have the data, it's a prerequisite, but then you have to have the stories. Storytelling matters. And so we'll be collecting those stories over the next few weeks and months as well. It's a long story, my friends. So I don't want, what I really want people to take away from this, and what I want you to go home with, is that we are in the middle of the beginning of this story for the next few years. And I sometimes look back to history, and I say, how did history play out? And I want to remind everybody that in 1945, we were at a crossroads as well. And as we entered 1945, Vannevar Bush wrote this thing called The Endless Frontier, which has been cited too much, but it really was a visionary document, okay? And he wrote it, and then it was rejected by the Truman administration. It was not accepted. And then 5 years went by between the proposal of that vision and the creation of the National Science Foundation. And it was 5 years in which there was hyperinflation because the war had ended. It was 5 years in which we were still a segregated society. It was 5 years in which there was an argument about block grants to the states to do science versus having a National Science Foundation. It was a time when we argued about whether or not the National Science Foundation should have a scientific leader or someone who was a political appointee directly related to the president. That took 5 years, and lots of things happened during that time, but we eventually got to the point where we came to a vision that said that we would invest in science in a time of peace, just like we would in a time of war. And then it took another 7 years and Sputnik to happen before real dollars came. And so I don't want people to lose sight of history and the fact that these are always challenging times to work through, that we always have to be the protagonists of our own story. We always have to be the advocates for what comes next. And it doesn't mean we're going to follow a straight line trajectory, and there will be damage done. And I can't do anything. I wish I could do more about that. But we as a community have to do that work. One of the things I will note to you is there are also things that will be suggested that will sometimes be counterproductive. There are moments to pull different levers. There are moments to pull different levers. There are moments when you make you give a stem winder speech and you sort of get people to go out into the streets. There are moments when you work to find your 5 friends on appropriations who are going to include some language in an appropriations bill. There are moments when you talk to the press, and you use all those pieces in a coordinated strategy. And that's what, if you're going to win, that's how you have to do it. You can't do it in a way where the energy becomes unfocused. And so really working with the community, working with all of you, is how we do that. And so I am, nothing gives me more energy than what we're in right now. So I don't want anybody to feel dejected. I want you to feel grief and anxiety because it's valid and I feel it too. but I also want you to feel empowered to say, there is work going on that is going to assure that we are in the middle of the beginning of that story, and it hasn't ended yet, and I have no intention of it being a story I don't like.
Sudip, thank you for your leadership, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you all. Thanks for being here, everybody. And please do use the community of this to get some energy. You're here with friends and colleagues. Gather that energy and take it with you, and take it home and talk to the folks that you're with there.